Welcome to the station crew. Enjoy your stay.
The station engineer in Space Station 14 is tasked with keeping the station repaired and the power running. Being an engineer is a very reactive job. You are pretty much waiting on antagonists to cause problems, aka damage the station's power net or damage the station itself, or you wait for a random event to give you something to do. But at the beginning of a shift, there are still things to do. First thing I would recommend any engineer do is, at least in their engineering locker, which you'll most likely spawn next to, is take your insulated gloves, and the rest of it is optional for the beginning of a shift. And the second thing you're going to want to do is, you're probably going to find the SMES room, and you're going to notice that the SMES are going to drain, and the reason for that is that stations by default do not start with any way to power themselves. You must set it up. In order to set up the most basic power in the game at the moment is something called an antimatter engine. The AME, which is the short term for it, is basically just a giant generator that takes antimatter fuel, which is just fancy blue canisters. There's nothing more complicated than that. In order to build an AME, you simply just need these AME parts, which you can find in crates in engineering, and you just set them up. And to set them up, you just pick them up and you put them down on tiles like so. And you can obviously utilize keybinds to make this a little bit quicker. But anyways, the easiest way to set up an AME is just build it in a rectangle or square shape. In this case, there's 9, so 3 by 3 is a square shape. And to actually pack the AME parts, you just need to take out your multi-tool, which will spawn in your utility belt, and you just left-click the parts, and you're going to want to make sure that they're actually lined up. It can be a little hard to see sometimes. And you just make sure they're lined up. And once all 9 pieces connect in a 3 by 3, in the middle there will be an AME core. I know it says shielding, but it is a core. And in order to actually get this power running, you must move the controller with a wrench over top of these orange high voltage wires. If it is not on these wires, it will generate no power. And it is as simple as it gets. You just take these blue fuel cans, you left click the controller, and the injection amount is just 2 times the core count. So if it's 1 core, it's 2 injection. If it's 2 cores, it's 4 injection. And you're never really going to get bigger than a 4-core AME, but this is pretty new in the game. Some stations in the game currently do not start with enough AME parts to run the station on its own, so that means we must move on to more advanced power generation. The second engine you are going to interact with as a engineer is the Singularity engine. To build a Singularity engine, or to at least set it up, you don't ever really build them from scratch. You need your hard suit, which again will spawn in your locker or in the suit storage, depending on the map, but it's always in the same room pretty much, and it's, I'd say, easy to find. You're going to need oxygen or nitrogen, depending on your species, and a gas mask. And in order to breathe and make sure you're EVA capable, you need to make sure you put your helmet on, which you can do with the action on this side, and you need to toggle your air on, because we are going to be going out in space. Every station has a slightly different Singularity setup. This one is not ready by default. If you're ever curious about the construction steps, you can always shift click, and to finish this particle accelerator, we need low voltage cables, which thankfully are provided right here. And we need to move the computer into the correct position. And you just have to unwrench it like basically every other part in the game. And the computer, come on, you can do it. There we go. Always goes to the right side of these the particle accelerator, regardless of which way it's facing. It's always to the right. And we just have to add low voltage cables to every single part, like so. And then to finish it, you just have to screwdriver them. And you can always come here and scan the parts. As you can see, it is incomplete because, well, this part is not where it's supposed to be. It needs to be in the middle, and you can just push it over. To rotate an object, you just right-click it, and then over here there's a rotate option. You just want the parts to line up. Other stations have an even easier Singularity setup than this one. And let me rescan it. It is now operational, but we do not want to turn it on yet because there is still work that must be done out in space. If you come out here, Make sure that the airlocks aren't open. Thankfully, you can't accidentally leave them open here. And all you want to simply do is first go in the middle. You're going to want to left click these containment field generators and make sure that they get the little green bluish light on the right. You can also always turn on your headlight, make this easier. So you make sure all these have the green light or blue light. And now you just simply walk around in the outside edge and turn on the emitters. If you alt click them, you'll lock them, so only people with engineer access can turn them on. And you're going to want to turn on the radiation collectors. The radiation collectors actually do not come with fuel in them. They come with the gas tanks, which you can eject from them, and as you can see inside, they have no pressure. So what you must do is you must actually get an Atmos technician to fill them up for you. As an engineer, you can't fill them up yourself because, as you can see, if you try to access them, it will just say access denied. So what you need to do is you need to work with your Atmos techs, and they need to unlock these plasma cans. But once they unlock them, all you have to do is put the plasma tank in, open it up, get the pressure maxed out, close it, and once you put it back into the thing, into the radiation collector, you'll see that it doesn't say there's a low pressure warning, but on the ones that are empty, it'll say the gas tank low pressure light is on. So yes, you can't technically do a Singularity by yourself without an Atmos tech, but you just have to ask the chief engineer or the an Atmos tech to assist you here. It's not difficult to refuel the Singularity radiation collectors, but it is something you will have to do eventually. So now that's it. That is how simple it is. You just left-click things to turn them on. You simply come to the Singularity, the particle accelerator over here. You turn it on strength 1. You do not want to go higher, and turn it on. And you can basically walk away. The Singularity will then power the station for a very long time until the fuel in the radiation collectors burns out. And almost every station in the game provides an additional room with more Singularity parts. And in here, there's actually another gravitational Singularity generator. So once the Singularity dies out, almost every station in the game will let you just rebuild it basically for free, because you just bring this back over and recharge it up, you refuel the plasma in the canisters, and you're good to go. And I'm trying not to overwhelm you with information, so I'm just going through the setup guide. I'm not going to explain how to run engineering forever. I mean, like I said, engineering is a very reactionary department, so it's hard to fully explain these processes. Now I'll explain how the 3 types of cables in Space Station 14 work exactly. In Space Station 14, there are 3 types of power cables: low voltage, medium voltage, and high voltage wires. Low voltage wires are the most common wire in the game, and they are required to, well, power basically any device. An APC, a control terminal for the area's electrical system, is basically a circuit breaker. APCs on their own do not have much battery, but they do have a little bit of a battery and can last on their own without external power for a short time. So this APC has no connection to any form of power other than itself, and APCs connect with low voltage cables to a larger area network. So as you can see, this low voltage cable runs from the APC down here, and that allows it to power this computer. You can always see the load of a low voltage network by clicking on an APC and examining the load. Now, how do APCs actually maintain power? Well, if you shift click them, you can see they have a connector for medium voltage cables. Medium voltage cables connect to substations. Substations reduce the voltage of electricity put into it. So basically, you're converting medium voltage cables from a larger battery into low voltage power through an APC, and the APC will then use the low voltage cables to power devices. So as you can see here, the substation feeds into the APC with a medium voltage cable. The APC feeds power to this computer with a low voltage cable. Now, here's a more complete system. This is an SMES, a high-capacity superconducting magnetic energy storage. It is a large battery, and how it works is it has a connector for high voltage cables. And if you actually see, it has 2 connections, and that's for the final example. So what this does is it takes power, runs it through these high voltage orange cables to a substation. The substation converts that power into medium voltage, and that connects through yellow. And then the yellow connects to an APC. And just like before, the APC converts it into low voltage cables. And then the low voltage will power all the network's devices. And here's the final example. This is how a station is powered. You take your power generating source, in this example it's a generator, it runs through HV cables to a cable terminal. You see a small warning on the red cables in grungy black ink. Connect red to battery for charge. So a cable terminal will connect high voltages to the SMES. A charging SMES, as you can see here, will have these blinking lights on the side that flash green, red, and yellow, and orange to let you know that it is charging. And then, just like the previous system, it will convert the high voltage into the substation. Substation converts into medium voltage into APC, which converts into green, low voltage to power devices. That's how cables and power conversion works in Space Station 14. Back on the station, it is very advisable to get a T-ray scanner. You can find them in electrical toolboxes, or you can find them in U-tool machines. The T-ray scanner is something that lets you see the wiring, pipes, and everything underneath floor tiles. And that lets us observe directly how the powering works. If you remember from my previous example, you'll see that there are these SMESs. They have these high voltage cables, and if you literally follow the high voltage cables, they will go through the entire station, and they'll go into the substations, just like I showed. The substations will then have these medium voltage cables that will leach out and power various APCs across the station. And the entire station is one awesome interconnected web of wires and substations, APCs, and the SMESs are pretty much always in engineering. And that is how you can determine power issues. It is kind of hard to show power issues, so I will just come up with a mock scenario of how you would actually fix them. Well, before you go and fix a power issue, you're going to want to be prepared. Electrical toolboxes actually by default spawn with 10 of each cable and some tools to help you fix it. You don't really need the tools because you have a full tool belt. So I would take everything out of it except a toolbox. And it is always very, very valuable to try to carry a good bit of steel on you. A stack is preferable, but if you can't get a stack, just get as much as you can. So I would recommend, if you're trying to fix a problem on the station, you bring an electrical toolbox in your hand with at least 10 of each cable, because you never know exactly what you're going to be getting into, and you want to bring steel. Typically where there's power out, cables are either just snipped, they're blown up. There's normally also holes to space because of all this. Typically, power destruction is very synonymous and goes in hand with station destruction, but not always. But it's good to be prepared as an engineer. So now I will make a mock scenario of how to fix power. For this mock scenario, let's assume that on the radio you heard that the bar and the kitchen are out of power and that there was a bomb that went off. What you should do in this scenario is assume that the environment is spaced. And the number one tell that something is spaced in Space Station 14 is that you'll see these floor tiles. You'll see floor tiles get ripped up. You'll see people inside gasping if there's people inside. In general, you'll notice there's a lot of things that don't have power. You can always shift click things to see if they have power, and if they don't, you must crowbar your way in. If you are opening a room that is directly spaced, there will be a message above your head telling you that you feel a gush of air. If you don't have that message, you're probably fine to open the door. Well, as we walk in here, yes, it's quite a mess. It's dark, and I can't quite tell what's happening. The first thing that's always safe to do is check APCs for power. And for this, you probably want your T-ray scanner on, which you can always have it on your pocket. I always check APCs first because sometimes it is a very simple problem. And look at that. If an APC is turned off, it will be gray and have 0 wattage load. Well, I turned it on, but that doesn't solve the bomb issue. I could tell something's spaced, and because all these tiles are ripped up, and if I look around, oh, yep, I can see it in the corner. There is indeed a giant hole in maintenance, and I can see that the kitchen itself is completely spaced. So in this scenario, I can't get the door open. So sometimes you have to hack open doors as an engineer to prevent more damage from being done. To hack a door, you simply just need a screwdriver, a multi-tool, and your crowbar. Just pulse from left to right, and keep pulsing until the power goes out. Once the power is out, you can crowbar it. If you manage to pulse a bolt wire, don't panic, you just have to unpulse it. Don't snip the wires because you don't want to cause damage to the door. The power is out. Oh, I wasn't fast enough, sorry. Just got to repulse it. Crowbar it open, walk in, and immediately crowbar the door behind you as to avoid further spacing. So here we have two issues. There is a complete missing hull, and there are partially missing hull, aka there's this lattice. To fix complete holes in the game, you need to make things called rods, and it only takes one steel to make 2 rods. To place rods, you don't misclick like I did. You just click on the empty tile with the rod, and that will place down lattice. To make lattice, not lattice, to make it subflooring, you just put down floor tiles, or if you really want to, you could just use a single piece of steel if you want to be quicker about it. However, it is often best to try being crafty and save as many materials as possible, because as you can see here, there's a hole to space. In order to craft walls, you just press G to go to your construction menu, and you can type in wall. Object just named wall is the only option we have. And you can click down multiple walls at a time, and you can even build multiple walls at a time. So if you just click both of them at the same time like so, you see I put down 2 girders, you just click the girders again, and we have successfully sealed off this hole. However, power is still messed up. And I could tell this because the APC is red, it's dead, and the fact that the APC is dead means that it is not getting power through medium voltage cables. And I can easily fix this by coming in here and realizing, oh yeah, there is missing medium voltage cables, it's not connecting. So I can just take my medium voltage cables from my electrical box, finish the connection, and I have power back here. However, there's a larger issue. If you notice, the high voltage cable network is cut as well. So I'm going to want to reconnect that, because without the high voltage cable network being connected, a substation is going to lose power because, as I showed you earlier in this video, there's nothing powering the substations because the high voltage is how power is generated, period. And that is the general gist of how to repair both spacing damage and electrical damage. Obviously, fixing damage in space station is never going to be this simple, but at least just knowing how to do it is important. Damage is very, very dynamic in this game. You're never going to see the same place destroyed twice. You're never going to see the same thing destroyed in the same way, but you need to at least know what you're doing in order to fix it. In order to do solars, a lot of maps have them marked off as solar, but they're typically always in these yellow electrical doors in maintenance, and inside you'll find the solar control computer. In order to set the power correctly, you basically just set the angle to exactly what you want, and you set the velocity anywhere between 5.6 and like 7-ish, and you basically just watch the numbers change and get them as close as possible. See, like, it jumped up by 0.3 when I was only 0.2 behind, so I can increase this to like 5.9. And that's honestly probably fine for the rest of the shift. You can adjust it later, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much. And in order to connect solars, it's really, really easy. You just get high voltage cables, which are pretty much always provided, and you just make sure all the solars are connected, like so. And you just bring them all the way to this solar tracker, like that. And now that is a working solar branch. That is as easy as it gets. And just as a final closing note, if you ever want to see how much power is actually being produced, you can always take out a multi-tool and shift click cables, and you can see here the current supply is 25 kilowatts. That is how much power this solar branch is creating, and it will fluctuate quite a lot because you can't see it, but the station's technically rotating. The sun or star is technically rotating around the station. So there will be times where it's really good and times where it's not good in power generation. There are 3 generators in the game, but the 2 that are the most useful for engineers to know are the Pac-Man and Super Pac-Man. The Super Pac-Man isn't all that practical because it takes refined uranium to work, and that's one of the rarest materials in the game. But the Pac-Man only takes plasma, which is more common. And in order to get a Pac-Man to work, you can either use it in high voltage cables, but I think it's not as effective to use it in high voltage personally. So you just want to anchor it down. And if you left click it, you can convert it to medium voltage power, which I think is more useful because they don't have the power to they don't have the generation to power the station. They hardly have enough to power like a few departments. So it's better, in my opinion, to just work on the medium voltage network, because remember that basically bypasses needing the SMESs, and you just feed off this medium voltage network entirely. So to show you how useful these are, you can snip off the medium voltage network. So it kills the power just like before. And if I power it up, just click start. It will essentially just power this cable specifically to this APC until the fuel ends. As you can see, the charge is going up now because the generator is becoming more efficient. And yes, you can use this to restore power to a room temporarily. Uh, this is not a long-term solution in any way, but there are times where you are going to want to try to power a specific room. It is pretty common in Space Station that the entire power net as a whole will be doomed. Thank you for watching. I hope this wasn't too long-winded. I tried to explain it as good as I could. Um, I think it's good to try to have all of engineering explained in one video rather than how I had it before where it's in like 6. So, again, thank you for watching.